Hello everybody and welcome. Today is February 27th, 2021, and today is a big day in Nintendo history. We are covering Pokemon's 25th anniversary, and we brought a special guest with us today. I'm one of your co-hosts, Garrett.
I'm Ben.
And you're listening to
Out of Mana.
Alright Ben, Pokemon Day.
Hey, it's February 27th, and it is Pokemon Day.
We got some big news about some Pokemon games coming up, which is very exciting news for anyone who's a fan of Pokemon, obviously. And even, to be honest, as someone who doesn't play Pokemon games, I still get excited about this news.
As filthy casuals, it is exciting news still, because it's some really cool stuff. I think we're all collectively pretty excited about this.
Yeah, because, I grew up on Pokemon, which is funny because I didn't actually play any of the games, but I was someone who was obsessed with the TV show. I had like every VHS.
You did?
Yeah.
You had the VHS tapes too?
Yeah, I had all the VHS.
Your parents bought you VHS tapes.
Yep.
I'm surprised. I had all the VHS tapes, and I feel like that's a true statement because and there was a whole wall of them.
Yep.
And remember, like they would in between the episodes when the commercial break was supposed to happen. Who's that Pokemon?
Exactly.
Yep. And rewatch those constantly, dude.
And I remember like the intro, and then they have the Pokemon rap.
Yep. Oh my god.
Did you ever memorize it when you were a kid?
Oh, dude. But before we get too far into this Pokemon thing, we need to mention the fact that we have our guest.
Yeah, we brought a very special guest and literal resident Pokemon fan.
A literal resident Pokemon fan because he is resident in my house. He shares the house with me. It is our friend Eric.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, Nintendo made two big announcements, so we're just going to let you take the honors of letting us know what happened.
Just go right into it, Eric. Go full on.
Well, the first game announced, which was the biggest announcement, in my opinion, was the remakes of Diamond and Pearl, which are Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. These are remakes that people have been hoping for and waiting for a very long time now. And I think the reason why they did it is simply because fans expected these games to come. They've been expecting them for years now. And personally, I'm really looking forward to it. My only gripe would be that when I saw the trailer, the visuals of the game didn't really seem what I was hoping for or expecting. The overworld especially seemed very bland and not very... It was basically a one-to-one remake of the original DS games.
So, they're not very shining or brilliant, in your opinion?
No, I wouldn't say that. No, they're not.
So,
damn. And they were only being made because fans wanted them, not because the companies actually legitimately wanted to remake them?
That's more speculation on my part.
Yeah, that just sounds depressing.
But these are actually the first remakes that are being made by a third party.
Oh, who's making them?
I forget the exact name. It's the same company that worked on Pokemon Home, which is basically
this is that one company that is kind of a little questionable in the sense of their quality, correct?
Well, that's a lot of Pokemon.
I don't know much about them to say for sure. Yeah, I don't know enough about them to say for sure, but I know that this is different from any other remake that they've done before, because every remake that preceded this has not only expanded greatly upon the visuals and expanded on the content that the original games had, but they've always been made on the same engine as the core series games. So they've always been part of the core series, whereas this seems more like it's a spin-off.
This is kind of branching off, and it's more of a one-to-one remake of the original games.
Yes.
With the kind of squashed down overworld style, almost chibi style, if you say, that only you see your character's normal proportions when you go into battle or conversations.
Yes, that's correct.
Huh. So, what region does this take place in?
The Sinnoh region, which is based on the island of Hokkaido in northern Japan.
Ooh.
And what generation is this?
This is Generation 4, based on Diamond and Pearl, which came out in 2006, I believe, in Japan, and 2007 in North America.
Oh, of course.
Nice, man. You got those facts down. I like this.
No, this
is why we got Eric.
This is our Nintendo guy.
So, of course, this is very, very important with any Pokemon game. What are the starting Pokemon for each of the versions?
So, in Generation 4, the starter Pokemon were Turtwig, Chimchar, and Piplup.
Okay. Is it the same for both of the games?
Yes, for
Okay.
both versions. The only version differences you would really see are not only the legendaries you get, like the mascot legendaries, what they call them.
Mm-hmm.
Those would differ between versions, and then certain Pokemon would be exclusive between the different versions,
Yeah,
but generally, both versions are identical.
Okay, so in any... I mean, I'm kind of, like, dumb with Pokemon stuff, so I know almost every, like, main title game, there's always Option 1 and Option 2. Do they always have the same starting Pokemon?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just the Pokemon you can find in that world, ultimately,
Yes.
that has a difference.
That have the
And as for
difference,
another
yes.
dumb question, like, will Brilliant have Brilliant Pokemon, and will Shining have Shining Pokemon?
Well, if Shining has Shining Pokemon, that'll definitely be a game that people really want to get.
I mean, that's what I'm
Shiny-
thinking. Like, we
Shiny.
love our shiny Pokemon, so... I mean, is this a hidden hint from Nintendo that this is the one to get the shinies?
Yes.
I'm completely bullshitting here, but yes.
Side note, Eric, didn't you just recently get your first shiny Pokemon in a certain game?
Yeah,
Yes.
it took you a while, yeah.
So in Pokemon Sword, I had been shining hunting for months with the shiny charms. My odds should be fairly reasonable.
This
but
was
I
more
had-
than just months, I feel like.
I was shiny hunting. It was probably like somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 encounters. When your odds are about 1 in 1,000.
Oh my
I
god.
mean-
So he was literally being skipped over numerous times over a span of almost a year.
I wouldn't say it was that long.
It was a
pretty
long time
It
because
was a pretty long
we
time.
talked about this exact same subject on the previous one that we had you as a guest, and
Yes.
that was quite a while ago now.
It
It was
feels like
quite
a
a
long
while,
time ago.
yeah. It was quite a while, but I did finally find the shiny Pumpkaboo that I was searching for
The shiny
months.
Pumpkaboo. What the hell is a Pumpkaboo?
It's a very interesting Pokemon because of all the Pokemon, it's the one Pokemon you can find in multiple sizes.
Oh, so it's like a pumpkin where it has like
Exactly,
multiple sizes.
exactly. It's
And
like
is it full of seeds and you can like roast them?
Well, if they were, that'd
Oh
be very,
no, that's
that'd be
animal
delicious.
cruelty. Ben.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yes.
We only capture Pokemon and enslave them in balls to use for
Well,
fighting.
well, does that also mean that like the Pokemon that's like a set of car keys, like house keys, like are they enslaved when I have them in my pocket and I'm using to unlock my belongings?
I'm curious what they do unlock.
And what about the Pokemon that's either fake or real antique teapot? If I'm using it for tea, is that cruelty?
Unless maybe if it enjoys doing that, it might.
If
not
it
be.
enjoys doing that, that just seems weird.
it's
Like
its life's purpose.
Like I'm pouring the tea out of it. It's like like it's slightly self-satisfied.
Oh my god. Okay. So back on the topic. With this game, you mentioned that they're not. Well, I guess you said you're not quite sure if they're adding anything new because typically with remakes they do add new stuff, right?
Yes, so the last remakes they did, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which came out in 2014, they, after you beat the main story, there's a whole post-game story.
Oh, okay.
So they added a completely new like section to the game, basically.
Yes, they added a completely new
Oh, that's
section to
cool.
the game, a completely new story, and even throughout the main story, they add a lot more backstory to the characters that didn't really get much backstory in the original Ruby and Sapphire games. They definitely made the games a lot. They expanded the map, they expanded the visuals, of course, because it came out like 12, 11 years later after the
And these
originals.
visuals were updated to almost current gen Pokemon games of the time.
Yes, they came out with Generation 6, and so they were built on the Generation 6 engine. They operated with the same games on the same system. They were Generation 6 games, basically. They were just remakes of Generation 3.
As opposed to the self-proclaimed Shining and Brilliance.
Yes, the one thing I will say is that it would be very difficult to remake it on the Sword and Shield engine because Diamond and Pearl were games that had like the tile-based system where you move like up, down, left, right.
And that would have been kind of difficult to translate to a
because
realistic-looking world.
Generation 7 stopped the whole tile thing. It ended with Generation 6, and with Generation 7, you no longer had like, oh, here's a grass tile and here's a regular tile, and you move up, down.
Oh,
up,
and there's a
that's it.
Snorlax blocking that tile. You can't just walk around it. You have to move it.
Yes, I mean, trust me, Generation 7 had plenty of roadblocks, like more than any other generation, in my opinion, but it didn't have, it wasn't just two axes that you could move on. It changed that, and
You can move diagonally.
yeah, so you can move, well, you could technically do that in Generation 6, but it was still tile-based. But
the
my
future.
point is that in Generation 8, you wouldn't really be able to convert a game that was that basic in the map design to an updated thing without drastically changing the map into something completely different.
So does that mean that you're kind of okay with it then?
I'm still looking forward to the game, and I'm still probably going to get it because I had a lot of fond memories playing Pokemon Pearl and Pokemon Violet.
As a lot of people have, I'm sure.
Yes, and maybe I'm wrong about the whole added content. Maybe there's a whole trove of content that they're going to add to the game, like new maps, new areas, new
Yeah,
Pokemon.
they're not done announcing everything for it, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And the game is coming out late this year, so there's still plenty of time for new stuff to be announced for that game.
Cool.
Yeah.
And the reason I kind of ask you these questions interview style is because, like I said, there's a group of a sizable group of fans who are displeased about the way it looks.
Yeah, and they're
So I'm
concerns.
I'm kind of getting that questionnaire from you because like you're one of them in a sense.
And their criticisms and concerns are completely valid, in my opinion. I don't think the games are going to be awful. I'm still looking forward to them, but I'm not quite sure what to expect at this point.
And there's already been memes made about the kind of chibi style too, which have been kind of amusing. And I honestly think Nintendo was not remotely expecting this reaction whatsoever.
Yeah.
So the thing about Nintendo, though, is they also know Pokemon people love Pokemon. They love shitting on it, but at the end of the day, they are going to, like, pre-order that shit as soon as it comes out.
They're like Legend of Zelda people. Like, they will buy the game again and again and again and again.
Because that's the thing, is you just need your new fix. Like, you play a game for as long as until the next game.
Even if your new fix is a nostalgia fix, because you're playing the exact same game just remade. And we're all guilty of that. We're all guilty of that. Like, listen to me with Oddworld and Final Fantasy VII fans. Basically just give me Tomb Raider 1 remade.
Yeah, we all love our remakes. So, okay, is there anything else with those two games that you think is worth talking about before we move on to the next one?
I don't think there's anything really to mention at this point other than we don't know much about them other than their remakes. They don't look quite as good as we were hoping for because, again, these games have been anticipated for a very long time. People have been really hoping for them. And I guess some people feel let down, but they're still looking forward to it and hoping for not only a game that scratches that nostalgia itch, but also provides new content, new story, new things that they didn't quite get. Because Diamond and Pearl, actually, to get on a bit of a tangent, had a lot of content in it that wasn't available to everyone who played the game, especially with the bonus mythical Pokemon, the Pokemon that could only be reached through certain events. There were events programmed into those games where you could get those Pokemon, but they were never made available to the public.
Interesting.
So my hope is that with these remakes, those same events will be in the game.
They remedy that.
Yeah, they remedy it so that you can actually participate in them and get these certain Pokemon.
Very interesting. Okay.
That's a cool little fun fact right there.
Yeah, completely.
That's why we got you here, man. I like love this inside scoop.
This is some good scooping for sure.
And so, yeah, you mentioned that this is the first game, a remake of a game that's made by a third party, right?
Yes. The Game Freak is working with development, obviously, but it is being made by a third party.
And is Game Freak always the person who's making the Pokemon games through Nintendo?
Yes. Every single core series game has been made by Game Freak, even including the remakes.
So since when? Like the beginning of time? Since
the beginning of time. The very first game remakes that were made were Fire Red and Leaf Green, which came out in 2004. They were remakes of the original games. They were red and blue in the US, and in Japan they were red and green. So when the remake time came around, it was Fire Red and Leaf Green.
Oh, okay.
Of course. Yeah.
That makes sense because I was on Twitter and someone had mentioned something about like red and green, and they're like, "What are you talking about? It was red and blue. You don't even know Pokemon stuff." So it's because the Japan releases, red and green were the originals, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Pocket Monsters loves to trip people up.
I know, those pocket monsters. Okay, cool. That's very interesting. Okay, so Eric, what is the second big news?
So the biggest reveal, and which I'm still looking forward to this, but in my opinion, it's not something that I was anticipating
this one's really cool.
Is Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is the first open world Pokemon game.
Ooh.
This one is really cool. I gotta say, as someone who hasn't played Pokemon games in like a decade and more, I'm actually excited for this one because this one had like the Breath of the Wild like flow past the character's shoulder. There's the world, and you're like, what?
I mean, it's like every Pokemon player's dream is to have an open world.
It's just like how every Harry Potter player's wet dream is to have what's coming out soon. And yeah, dude, this is awesome. So do tell us more.
So yeah, tell us the details. Let's hear it.
So what's funny is that with this game, this open world game, it's set in the same region, the Sinnoh region, that Diamond and Pearl are set in.
Okay.
The only difference is this game takes place during what is presumed to be the feudal era. It's very similar to feudal Japan. You start out in a small village, and it's the story. They don't really go into the story much, but they imply that it's set in a time when Pokemon and humans lived somewhat separately.
Oh.
And basically, you start out as a trainer. You move through the region, and so they don't really go into much detail, of course, because the game's not coming out till next year. But I guess the whole point of the game is to try and solve this mystery, this legend, while also trying to expand the Pokédex and to try and bring Pokemon and humans together.
Is your Pokédex like a scroll that you have to like write in with like ink?
Maybe. I have absolutely no idea what to expect, but it's...
Or you have to like roll out papyrus and make it?
Despite being set in ancient times, it basically is the same exact mechanics as you'd expect in a modern Pokemon game.
So, what about the Pokeball? I mean, I think this has already been addressed in some other media, but what is the Pokeball for feudal era?
Yeah, didn't Professor Oak make the Pokeball?
So I think I saw some artwork of the primitive Pokeballs that they used.
Is it like an acorn?
It's so in Generation 2 they introduced these things called apricorns, which is...
That's it.
Oh my god, it literally is. Okay, I thought you were making a joke there.
Fruit that are like, they use them to create Pokeballs from. And apparently these were used way, way, way back when. So even when modern technology didn't exist, you could still capture Pokemon using these apricorns.
So they're like giant nuts, and you capture Pokemon inside of them.
Yes.
Do they glow and like make that suck them in?
I'm curious to see if they do that, because we don't actually get to see much of the ancient Pokeballs.
Like what is in a Pokeball? Is it just like I'm sorry, this is something that
it's a prison, Ben.
This is something that I've never really learned, and I feel like I should learn by now because I watched the series. I've seen a lot of Pokemon media, and I've what is in a Pokeball? Like, when it takes the Pokemon, does it break them down on, like, a molecular level and make them to goo, and then store them in that goo inside the ball, and then spray them back out when it wants to?
It's definitely an aspect of Pokemon lore that people... They really, really haven't gone into.
They kind of gloss over it.
Yeah.
So, what would the Apricorn one do? Would it just, like, rip them into, like, a void, into, like, another dimension, and then spit... I mean, is it like Inuyasha? Like, what's gonna happen?
I'm really interested to see how they do it, because this is the first time they've ever focused on a Pokemon, a time period long before the modern era. It's always been mentioned in Pokemon, like in myths, like every generation has their own myths, and they talk about like, oh, in these ancient times when humans and Pokemon did this and that. And what's really special is that Generation 4 in the whole Sinnoh region is probably the most lore-heavy region of all of them. It's the legendaries in that game all have their own specific lore, and they all have a lore that is interconnected, meaning they all relate to one another, whereas in previous generations, the legendaries and the mythos didn't really have much interaction. Yeah. Generation 4 goes pretty far in depth, and in fact, there's a city in the Sinnoh region, I'm trying to remember, Canalave. It's called the Canalave Library, and you can read, in the Canalave Library, you can read about the different myths and legends, and they go into detail about how Pokemon and humans lived back then in the Sinnoh region. And what they describe in those books from way, way back in the game when the game first came out on the DS is kind of similar to what we're seeing in this new open world game.
Cool.
So it's actually being quite faithful to the lore, more or less.
Wow.
I'm actually, as you're explaining this, I'm surprised that they're being that detailed, because I feel like Pokemon games don't. I mean, this is someone who doesn't play them, but I just feel like a Pokemon game is a Pokemon game, and so the fact that they're exploring this new like time period of like the origin of kind of Pokemon, maybe not the origin, but like you said, the origin of like them living in harmony, not so separate. So
to interject here, when you said not to say the origin, it actually literally is the origin, I think, because the game is, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and in Pokemon lore, Arceus is the creator deity of Pokemon.
Is Arceus the one that looks like a lion? He's all like...
He looks more like a weird alpaca or llama with like a wheel around him, but basically he's the... He created the universe in Pokemon. He created the Pokemon universe, not just
So
Pokemon
he didn't create
himself.
the human universe, he created the Pokemon universe. So there's like a human version of him?
No, I don't think it works that way.
Wait, so he's God.
He is God, yes.
He is God. So in human churches, like he's on the wall, like humans worship a Pokemon.
There is a church in the Sinnoh region where they don't specifically mention Arceus, but there is a religion,
So humans tame gods. So humans are like taming gods.
It is
because it is just the creator of all life.
It is quite funny because it's possible to capture Arceus, to capture the creator,
capture God.
Yes,
capture God.
You literally capture God. Yes.
What you can in the game? You can capture God.
Well, because he's
can you then create whatever you want? Like, can you just go all out?
He is your prisoner at that point.
Well, like, does this become Bruce Almighty?
So in the original DS games, again, because there was a lot of content that was missing, that was one of the ones that was missing, was the ability to
capture God.
Arceus.
To capture God.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But, I mean, it is feasible, yes, to capture Arceus, and then you capture God.
Oh my god, I love this so much. This is so interesting.
That is pretty damn interesting, dude. So going back to more normal notes that other than God of Pokemon and all creation. This new game will only have Generation 4 Pokemon in it.
Yes and no. So with each subsequent generation, they usually include Pokemon from previous generations, but nothing really past it.
Well, obviously not only Generation 4, but I mean everything up until Generation 4. So this isn't, because this is its own game. This is not a remake of an older game.
This is its own game.
So it's only. Do you think it's only going to include up to Generation 4?
I think so, yes. Especially since in the Sinnoh region, you don't really see. The Sinnoh Pokédex was slightly limited in the kinds of Pokemon you could see, but from what we saw in the trailer, there were Pokemon from previous generations. And in fact, in Generation 4, the Pokemon introduced in Generation 4, a lot of them were either pre-evolutions or evolutions of Pokemon that had been introduced in previous generations, so it would be pretty impossible to only include the Generation 4 without including the previous ones, because you would have Pokemon that evolve from something that would not exist in that region. So
okay,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Interesting.
Okay, so sounds amazing, but I gotta get the elephant in the room here. The visuals, as I was excited about this game, but looking at what they're showing, I'm looking at a game that's being released in 2022 on a fairly powerful system. And this game looks like it's running at 15 frames per second. I mean, I've seen better looking games made 6-7 years ago.
So
Pokemon games.
What Garrett's basically saying is that it looks worse than Breath of the Wild, which has come out years ago.
It looks worse than Sword and Shield.
It looks worse than Sword and Shield, and it looks worse than the free mobile game. What's it called?
Oh, Genshin Impact.
Genshin Impact, which we mentioned because it's a very similar looking style game to Switch games. Yeah,
it's very pretty. People were even being the joke was oh my god, it's like Breath of the Wild. It's like any game that has green grass is it's a Breath of the Wild.
Any game that has green grass and a character standing upon said green grass is now Breath of the Wild.
So this is being made by Game Freak, right?
Yes, I do believe so.
Game Freak
in-house, yes.
Oh my god. So why do they get away with this? Is this a case where they know people are going to buy their games no matter what? Or do you think this is a legitimate lack of talent on the team?
Lack of talent, damn.
I mean, I'm just going to say it. What's the excuse here?
Well, but the excuse could also be the Switch is an older console now. The Switch is kind of at the end of its
Okay, but we
era.
can also run The Witcher 3 on the Switch. We can also run many third-party games.
Completely correct, but what if I'm not even trying to justify it, but
No, I know. But
it does. So when I mentioned that we had the similar scene as Breath of the Wild, where you passed over the character's shoulder and looked at the world, it looked worse. The world did look worse than what we saw in Breath of the Wild.
Well, even the combat, I was it was stuttering. It just looked crappy.
So,
it looked like something I wouldn't want to play.
But we also haven't had any confirmation, nor not confirmation of the Switch Pro. So is that going? If that happens, will this game be on it, and will it be better on it.
Yeah, so basically there's been no evidence of any new console coming.
And, well, I mean, what about, I mean, Eric, like, being our guy here who knows about this, like, what do you think about the Switch Pro as of now?
To be perfectly honest, and this is my opinion, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I don't think the Switch Pro is actually going to be a thing. Mostly because, again, we're almost 4 years now into the Switch's run. Mm-hmm. If they're going to have an updated model of the Switch without being a next-gen console, I think it would have come out by now.
And that's kind of what I was saying, is this Switch is an old console. It's kind of at the end of its generation. But Nintendo tends to release consoles, like you said, 4 years. And what was give us some separation of years between consoles for Nintendo.
For Nintendo, it's usually 5 to 6 years between consoles. From the Wii came out in 2006, Wii U came out in 2012, so that's a 6-year gap. And then from Wii U to Switch, it was 5 years.
Okay, but here's my defense. Wii was great, but then they came out with the Wii U, and guess what? No one bought that crap.
True.
They tried too hard to make a Wii version 2. Now the Switch is like one of the most
incredibly popular as well.
Incredibly popular, super smart. It's a handheld, which can also be a console. I just don't see where they can go from here to lose that perfect... I mean, it's like they found the perfect thing.
Well, you buy the next one's going to be like a nail you buy, and you just hammer it into your skull, and you start injecting like the cartridges into your head.
So this is what... I know Nintendo is very big on...
Innovation. Yeah.
But, okay, so they've done really well on different handhelds. They've done really well on different consoles. Now they have one that can be both.
They are basically the pioneers in those markets.
Why would they change, like, the perfect device other than make it stronger and more innovative? So I just don't see... And the Switch is, like, perfect name. They nailed the name on the Switch. I think it's awesome.
And the thing is, it's like, I agree with you, Garrett. Like, I perfectly agree that the Switch is kind of the apex of its kind right now. So
it's like the perfect Nintendo machine at this point.
So obviously Nintendo will figure something else out eventually because that's Nintendo.
Yeah.
But I agree. Like, the Switch Pro is a move that I would be okay with. Like, I have a Switch. I don't really want to get a new one, but I wouldn't mind if that meant better, bigger games.
And I know a ton of people that own next generation consoles, and there's games that they just prefer to play on the Switch because they just want to be able to be on the train.
True.
They want to be, well, back when COVID didn't exist.
What's a train?
Be on a plane, an automobile. No, hopefully not an automobile.
An automobile on my Stanley steamer.
But like they can go play like Doom in their bed. You know what I mean?
I love playing Doom in my bed.
I actually don't even know if Doom's on there. I'm pretty sure it is.
I just love being in bed playing Doom.
But like, there's certain games where you're just like, this is a great indie title, which would look better on my PlayStation 5. But like, man, it's hard to beat just lounging on my couch in a little ball, like cuddled up under a blanket with the hot chocolate next to me.
Okay,
you know what I mean.
I don't think I've ever done that, but that sounds awfully nice.
You're missing out. With a crackling fire during the winter.
The crackling, yes. I'll just have to go to my lodge,
like a cat purring next to
you. My Tahoe lodge, and what am I doing staying in this small house here? I'm not some kind of pauper. I should be in my mansion. Why am I here?
My point is, and also, I'm pretty sure that it was about the same amount of time between the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro. Because the PS4 was around for 8-9 years.
I mean, the main reason to mention this though is that PlayStation and Xbox are kind of doing their own thing right now, and we're just not sure if Nintendo's going to join that train.
Well, Nintendo's always been doing its own thing, which is what makes it different.
So what do you think, Eric? I mean, do you really think that the Pro is just not going to happen?
I mean, it could. I personally don't think a Pro, because there was no Wii U Pro. There were different models.
There shouldn't have even been a Wii U.
The Wii U was like the Pro version of a Wii.
Exactly. It was a next-gen console. So I think if there is going to be a, quote, Switch Pro, it's not just going to be an updated Switch. It's going to be an entirely new console.
But that would defeat the purpose of it being handheld. Like, they can't make it that much bigger or people aren't going to want to carry it around.
True.
Or smaller, to be honest. It's like the perfect size.
I would really like my Switch to be the same size as the new Xbox,
or the PS5,
or the PS5. I want to be holding something the size of actually a large infant, and I'd probably have to wrap it in blankets just in case if I drop it. And yeah, I mean, I'd be okay with that.
I honestly get what you're saying, Eric. And you know what? You're probably going to be the right one because Nintendo just does whatever the hell they want.
They always come from like stage left and just hit you in the side of something you were not expecting.
Yeah.
None of us were expecting the Switch. The Switch was like the pleasant surprise of the century when we got there. We were like, whoa, yes, what? We didn't even know we wanted this.
Yeah, they were very, very smart.
Because everyone was tired to hell and beyond of the Wii. And so getting the Switch was... It brought us back to Nintendo.
And they can use this device to bring back all the games on Wii U that no one played.
What are... I mean, do you have any thoughts, Eric, on kind of what they might do?
I think personally it's going to be a while before we see any news about a new console. Just because the Switch is doing so well and it's still going very strong.
Exactly.
There's still games that have yet to come out. Metroid Prime 4.
Oh my
Breath
God,
of the Wild
it's never
2.
gonna come.
These are games which are highly anticipated and we know they're coming for the Switch.
Launch titles for the Switch Pro.
I mean,
come on.
A new Bayonetta and new Metroid.
Yes. And new Splatoon. Oh wait, we're getting that.
Oh yeah, we're getting that with our upside down Eiffel Tower, yeah. Blasting gender concepts.
But okay, so back to Pokemon. Does this bother you, the whole frame rate issues, the visuals, or are you just going to be happy to play this game?
Honestly, personally, I'd just be happy to play it regardless.
And that is what Game Freak freaking banks on, man. They're like, they don't care. We're going to put our interns on this.
Are you going to get the next Legend of Zelda game? Yes, and I will get the next one and the next one, even if they re-release it over and over.
I'm being mean. I'm sure there's very talented people there, and Nintendo has its own formula for doing what it wants.
Every game company does this, though. They bank on nostalgia, and they bank on fans.
I just don't... It just feels like a slap in the face, you know? And maybe that was just really bad, like, early concept, so it just wasn't optimized, and it was just running poorly. Which would make sense, honestly. I know I'm shitting on this, and I normally don't shit on things, so this is like
this is normally my job, and
I know.
I'm literally sitting back in my chair watching Garrett do this right now because normally I'm in that spot.
I will stop talking about it now. But any other things about this game that you wanna wrap up?
There's nothing really that stands out to me other than just the fact that it looks... I mean, in terms of frame rate issues and graphics, it definitely could use some improvement, but in terms of an actual open world Pokemon game and the mechanics, it actually looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, games, it's not about visuals, it's about the gameplay. And that Pokemon fans, as you've told me many, many times before, we don't really care how it looks as long as it's fun to play.
I mean, and Garrett, just remember, some of the best experiences we had playing games were playing Tibia.
Yeah, that is
Tibia literally looks like dog shit smeared on a screen, and we enjoyed the hell out of that.
It is very, very true. That is very true. I can't deny you.
So, we're not done there. I'd love to hear some more about other Nintendo bits that are coming out, other little juicy bits. Anything else Nintendo mentioned isn't releasing?
So, aside from the Direct earlier this month, Nintendo has been pretty much radio silent on their big projects, so there's not that much that I can really speculate on or talk about. The biggest one that I've been waiting for, aside from Pokemon titles, would be Breath of the Wild 2, which was announced almost 2 years ago, and so far we have heard absolutely nothing more about it. But Breath of the Wild has honestly been one of my favorite games that I've ever played, period. It is an amazing game, and I'm really hoping that with the sequel, they not only add a bunch new content, but there was a lot of stuff that they wanted to put into Breath of the Wild that they were not able to, even with the DLC packs. They just couldn't fit it all into the game, so I'm willing to bet that with the sequel, they're going to fit in a bunch of stuff that they couldn't put in the first game.
Well, and we see in the sequels, like what we have seen of the sequel, the Hyrule Castle is floating.
Yes.
So would you think there will be more things in the air? Literally?
Possibly, maybe a sky area, because...
That would be cool.
There have been sky levels and sky areas in previous Zelda games. Right now, the first thing that comes to mind is the Sky City from Twilight Princess.
Ooh, yeah.
That was definitely a fun level to do, a fun dungeon. And I'd be curious to see if there is a sky level in Breath of the Wild 2, if it has any similarities at all to the sky area in Twilight Princess.
And on another note of things that haven't been in Nintendo and the Zelda games for quite a while. What about the Minish? Do you think we'll see them in Breath of the Wild at all?
Oh, I think that's highly likely, actually, because Breath of the Wild was going to have something like the Minish in it.
Yeah, I think I heard about that, yeah.
They have screenshots, actually, of the finished content, the tiny houses and Link being able to shrink down and enter the tiny homes, but they ended up not putting that into the main series of the game, or not into the Breath of the Wild, the first game. But I think because they weren't able to put it in the original game, it will most likely end up in the sequel.
They had obviously planned for it to be in there, and to be honest, like Minish Cap, it's not a game a lot of people played, but it was actually very fun.
It definitely was one of the Zelda games that really flew under people's radar, well, mainly because it was for the Game Boy Advance at the very end of the Game Boy Advance's run. So,
but it gave a very cool idea to the Zelda world where an environment could become something completely different if you just look at it from a different size, and that was a cool concept.
Yeah, it was a very cool.
And it allowed a lot of exploration to places that you might not normally think to explore.
So my theory, I didn't make it up. I heard someone else talk about it, but
plagiarism.
So in Breath of the Wild 2, they think that it may be a situation where they reuse the map because it's Hyrule, right?
Yes,
like it is
it's the
Hyrule.
same Hyrule from Breath of the Wild. Yes.
So, I mean, I know the Zelda reach, like geographically, isn't much more than Hyrule, right? Yeah. You're pretty much always in Hyrule.
There have been a few Zelda games that take place outside of Hyrule,
like
Link's
the
Awakening,
Dream. Yeah, okay.
Majora's Mask. Those are games that don't take place in Hyrule. But yeah.
So, I feel like they would have to reuse Hyrule in some situation, and so the theory is possibly that it may be a Dark World setting.
I think that's possible. I think what will most likely happen is rather than a reverse world or a dark world like what Link Between Worlds did, it will simply be an expanded Hyrule with new areas that you can access before.
And that's kind of why I mentioned the flying areas, like floating areas, because maybe there's land above.
That would make sense too, yeah. I like both of these ideas.
I especially like the floating idea because that was one of my coolest experiences in Terraria, was when I got to go to the floating islands. I thought that was really cool.
I totally forgot about that,
I really enjoyed that little part of the game because it was like, whoa, there's stuff up here and it's so cool. There's a room made of gold. Like, it was cool.
Yeah, you spend like 99% of the game digging deeper down.
And there's stuff above. Like, I've always liked the idea of floating things. And so
Mario had that kind of stuff too.
When I saw Hyrule Castle floating, I was like, ooh, I hope there's going to be stuff up. Yes.
Another thing is, the original Breath of the Wild, one of the few criticisms aimed at the game is that there was large areas of land with absolutely nothing in it. Just, massive mountains you could explore, and maybe there were like a few treasures or cool enemies you could defeat, but that was pretty much it in terms of, things you could find in the world. But this massive, massive, massive world that you could explore, there was very little in it to do aside from shrines.
And wasn't there like no dungeons?
There were only 4 dungeons, and they were all pretty much identical to each other.
The shrines were basically the dungeons, and they are just puzzle dungeons. I mean, Legend of Zelda dungeons are all puzzle dungeons, but these were just repetitive. After 5 to 10 dungeons, you've kind of done them all. And
that's like a big staple of Legend of Zelda games is their dungeons, right? That's what you remember them by.
Yes, and harkening back all the way to, the original Zelda games, what comes to mind is Ocarina of Time back in 1998. It had 5, actually including it had 8 dungeons, and each one was unique in terms of atmosphere, in terms of the enemies you could fight, the bosses. Each dungeon was very unique. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, there were only 4 main dungeons or temples, whatever you want to call them, and they were all pretty much identical to each other.
Interesting.
So while Breath of the Wild obviously had a lot more space and a lot more content, in terms of the dungeons you had to do in the story, they were a little too repetitive, in my opinion. So I'm hoping that with the sequel, the dungeons are more like actual dungeons, like deep caves or areas you can explore, these, ruined temples, and each one being very, very unique with unique enemies, unique puzzles, unique bosses, each one being very different from each other with their own music and everything. Because, people, when you talk about Ocarina of Time, most people want to ask you what was your favorite temple? Because each one was so unique that you could have a favorite. Whereas in this game, you can't really pick a favorite because they're all the same.
Everyone's favorite was the water temple for sure.
Oh yeah, the water temple definitely. Having to, press start over and over again to take off the iron boots, put them back on, take off the iron boots, put them back on. That
Completely
God,
delightful.
I hate that kind of crap.
Delightful.
I'm gonna be completely honest. That's the kind of stuff that made me just not like Zelda games, where I have to like. I really appreciate them from afar. Like I have, as far as speedruns go, I have watched more Legend of Zelda speedruns than any other ones. Because I like the world. I love the world of Hyrule and Link and everything. But, like, actually playing them, I haven't played Breath of the Wild, and people keep saying it's one of the best games ever made ever. Which I will play it. Eric, do you have a physical copy?
I do, yes.
Do you, Ben?
I also do.
Okay, so I'm going to steal or borrow one of yours, whether or not you accept. So
whether or not we accept.
Just, I'll wait till you sleep. I'll sneak in.
I will scream. So... But Garrett, honestly, you and plenty of other people feel that way.
I know.
Legend of Zelda is one of those series that is beloved by many people, even those who haven't really played a lot of it, because it's kind of a hard thing to get into.
And didn't it just recently have its 35th anniversary?
Yes.
Like just right before, was it right before or right after Pokemon?
It's going to be after Pokemon, I think, because I think it's later this year.
Oh, I thought it already happened.
Yeah,
I think. It was Mario that happened earlier this year.
Yeah, Mario's.
Everyone's having their anniversaries.
Mario's the 35, and then Zelda was a year after Mario's.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we have the Squadala anniversary, and then we had the Paisanos anniversary. Great stuff.
This is all exciting stuff. Eric, thank you so much for your expertise on Nintendo. We will definitely have you back when more Nintendo news pops up.
If more Nintendo news pops up.
It will.
Or if you play a game that's on Nintendo and we can talk about it. You know, hey, expand.
You're always welcome on the show as long as you finish Nathan Drake, Uncharted.
Maybe.
Well, let's just hope that Eric does. We're going to leave it at that for Nintendo talk for today.
I think that's a pretty good stopper. We've definitely covered the subject thoroughly.
So, Ben, where can the good people find us on social media?
First and foremost, my favorite is always YouTube. We are Out of Mana on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And you can also email us. Again, another second favorite of mine is podoutofmana@gmail.com.
And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at podoutofmana.
For the more current people.
Yes. We're on Twitter the most. That's definitely our most active platform, and we would love to have some interaction there.
Definitely. If you want to hear my bullshitting, definitely go there.
Yeah, Ben is mostly the one in control of Twitter right now. I've been trying to do Instagram, but I've been lazy, but... that will change, I promise.
Anyway,
thank you again for joining us on this Nintendo Day. I hope you had fun, and I hope you're excited for the new Pokemon games. And we will catch you on the flip side.